Thanks, everybody. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to join this conversation. I'm going to talk a little bit about a learning experience that took place before the virus situation turned us into an environment where we really have to use virtual learning and distance learning in order to get through the basic, get through our basic learning experiences. Let me just take one quick second and see if I can control the screen here, or see if we can get back to that first screen, that first slide. Sorry, just give me 1 second to see if I'm... Yes, good. It seems like I am in control here. Okay, so it was really an honor to be on a team that included Dr. Zhang and also Tara Taylor, who's the head of drama and dance programs at the Fairfax County Public Schools. I work in an organization that's based here in Guangzhou, China. We work with several of the public high schools that are located here in China, public Chinese high schools. So our goal was to leverage a wonderful global classroom program that's been going on at Fairfax County Public Schools for many years and is involved in elementary, middle school, high school learning, and across all kinds of different disciplines. For this particular project, we wanted to engage students in the field of drama. We thought that drama would be a very interesting way to enter the global classroom experience and to sort of bridge these different cultures. We started by looking at how we would create common ground with the students. And so on a macro level, so a very high level, we looked at 5 different pathways, everything from sustainability down to content enrichment, that students from the Fairfax County Public School side and the Chinese public school in Guangzhou side would all be able to work through in the program. We also looked at the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and we used those goals as a framework to give students a way to think about ideas outside of just the cultural context of their own school or even their own country. So they were really looking at things with the perspective of one united world, not unlike this organization itself. After we had found those large common goals within the United Nations framework and our general learning structure, we took a look at the micro level. So what things do middle school students in China, in the United States, in vastly different cultural situations, what things do these students have in common? And so some of the first activities were virtual sharing, where students were asked to talk about what are some of the challenges of being a middle school student in your specific situation? What are some of the things you really enjoy about this phase of your life? And very quickly, with the teachers creating some guidance and some structure, the students were able to share in both video and also in written format these responses to certain questions and start to build a relationship. And so students in the Chinese classroom were paired with students from one of 2 Fairfax County Public Schools classrooms, and they started to get an understanding of what are some of the things that are really similar about a middle school student experience in China and the United States, and what are some of the things that are quite different. We followed that with 3 different kinds of projects. And so the first was a project that all the students involved worked on. So that was to create their own monologue after they had done some self-reflection on not just some of the challenges and some of the joys of being a middle school student, but also how they're thinking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals could potentially impact some of their future learning or impact the work that was going on in their schools. And so these monologues really ranged from everything from personal experiences of bullying to community experiences of getting involved with recycling or environmental protection, and they were shared. Every student then, shared with their partner, and all the students in both classes were able to access these monologues. After the monologues were processed, the students, specifically in the Fairfax County schools, took the content one step further and created devised scenes that were based on the monologues of their partners. So there was a process not just of expressing the perspective of your own culture, there was also the process of trying to understand the perspective of the other culture through the global classroom platform, and then create something artistic with that. Then that was shared back to the classroom who had sort of created it. And so there's this really wonderful mirroring of, I've shared something personal from my experience, you've taken that and created something artistic, and you've gifted that back to me. So this was the basic process that we used for the global classroom experience over the course of a semester of learning. So we ended up with these beautiful monologues, some devised scenes, and students in both sides took the plunge into some language acquisition. So the Chinese students were already involved in quite robust English language learning, but this experience definitely challenged them and pushed them to new levels. And they tried to do just about everything in the English language. The students in Fairfax County Public Schools, they got a Chinese lesson with every lesson in the global classroom. And by the end of the course, they were able to communicate at least some basic phrases in Chinese, which was a very nice piece. So what are some of the takeaways? We're now living in a situation which was inconceivable at the time of this global classroom, where through the methods and the technologies that were referenced by some of the speakers before me, we're finding we're really able to have robust and meaningful learning. If this global classroom exemplar can teach us anything, it's that, especially in this kind of a situation, we can remember to reach out in those similar kinds of ways. There are these beautiful virtual platforms that we can use for students, and it just becomes another tool in the toolbox to create a real sense of connectedness when students might otherwise feel quite isolated in their own homes. So being able to literally reach out across the world and have meaningful learning experiences is even more important in the current situation. It also promotes, of course, the feeling of global awareness. And finally, the teachers were able to create some really powerful instructional practices that right now are invaluable. So being able to use Padlet, Blackboard, workaround technologies in order to create conversations and to facilitate interaction from students that were not only in different places within a state, but within different places around the world, those kinds of skills are now in high demand. So I hope that especially as we're in this very challenging situation, and especially as we're finding, even on the world stage, challenges to communication, that we can continue to emphasize the power and the positive benefits of these kinds of global classrooms and global connections, and can really leverage the technology similar to the way that was done in this project to give the students more of these kinds of opportunities. So these were some of the shots from the Luther Jackson Middle School, the Robinson Secondary School, and the Huafu Middle School in Guangzhou, China. Following, these were some of the gifts that were given from the students participating to the other students in the project. You can see the joy on the faces. You can see from these pictures what an impact it had on the students. And I can say, having visited all the classrooms, both in the United States and in China, this was an incredibly powerful and highly impactful learning experience. And most of the impactful learning was done in a virtual way. So there's tremendous potential in this kind of environment to continue along with these kinds of programs. Now, there is a monologue that, if we have a moment, I think it would be nice to share. But at this point, I think I'd like to see if we could give the screen control back to Dr. Zhang, and if she could then select the monologue that you think would be the most appropriate to share. I know we're running a little bit short on time.